Okay, as you may or may not know, this is my first video lesson, so please bear with me. I thought I would start off by showing 3 note per string scale shapes in the key of E minor, basically covering all 7 scale shapes across the entire neck. And then I will try to explain to you how to transpose those to other keys. The first shape of the E minor scale I'm going to cover is the Locrian shape, which begins on the 2nd fret of the low E string. Keep in mind there are 3 notes on every string. So the Locrian shape is as follows. On the low E, 2, 3, 5, the A, 2, 3, 5, the D, 2, 4, 5, the G, 2, 4, 5, the B, 3, 5, 7, and the high E, 3, 5, 7 as well, which would be okay. The second shape is the Ionian shape, which is also known as the major shape. It begins on the next note of the scale, which is G, which is the 3rd fret of the low E string, and is as follows. On the low E, 3, 5, 7, the A, 3, 5, 7, the D, 4, 5, 7, I'm sorry, the G, 4, 5, 7, the B, 5, 7, 8, and 5, 7, 8 also on the high E. Okay, so that covers 2 shapes. The third shape, which is the next shape, is the Dorian shape. It is one of the more difficult shapes to master, but it is very fun to play, and it is a good tool to utilize when you're practicing. So the Dorian shape is as follows. On the low E, 5, 7, 8, 5, 7, 9 on the A, 5, 7, 9 on the D, and 5, 7, 9 on the G. On the B, you have 7, 8, 10, and on the high E, 7, 8, 10. Okay. The next shape is the Phrygian shape, which begins on the next note. You guessed it. It's the 7th fret of the low E. So the Phrygian shape is on the low E, 7, 8, 10, on the A, 7, 9, 10, on the D, 7, 9, 10, on the G, 7, 9, 11, on the B, 8, 10, 12, and 8, 10, 12 again on the high E, which a little faster would sound like. Okay. The next shape, which I rarely use, I basically use it as a connector piece between the Phrygian and the next shape after it, which is the Mixolydian. But this shape is called the Lydian shape. It begins on the 8th fret of the low E and is 8, 10, 12 on the low E, 9, 10, 12 on the A, 9, 10, 12 on the D, 9, 11, 12 on the G, 10, 12, 13 on the B, and 10, 12, 14 on the high E. Okay. The next shape is my personal favorite. I use it all the time in improvising, and even when I'm trying to come up with a cool lick in a certain key. It's easy. It's relatively easy to play, but you can get some really cool voicings from it as well. The Mixolydian shape begins on the 10th fret of the low E and is 10, 12, 14 on the low E, 10, 12, 14 on the A, 10, 12, 14 on the D. On the G, 11, 12, 14. On the B, 12, 13, 15. And 12, 14, 15 on the high E. Okay, so that's 6 shapes covered. We have 1 shape left, and that shape is the Aeolian shape. It begins on the root note E on the 12th fret of the low E, which the scale pattern is on the low E, 12, 14, 15, on the A, 12, 14, 15, on the D, 12, 14, 16, on the G, 12, 14, 16, on the B, 13, 15, 17, and 14, 15, 17 on the high E. Okay, so that's the Aeolian shape. So basically that covers all 7 shapes in the key of E minor. After that, they start repeating. So after the Aeolian shape, you have the Locrian shape once again, which, as you remember, begin on the 2nd, 3rd, 5th frets of the low E. Instead, it would begin on the 14th fret of the low E, and it would be 14, 15, 17. And they just keep repeating up until you run out of frets. So, I said I was going to show you how to transpose these to other keys and how to play these shapes in other keys. So, as you know, if you were in the key of, say, D minor instead of E minor, these shapes would not work. It would sound terrible. So, basically, if you wanted to play in the key of D minor and you wanted to utilize these shapes that I'm showing you, you would basically just shift those shapes down 2 frets. So, the root note that I keep in mind when I use my favorite shape, which is the Mixolydian, is on the D string on the 14th fret is the root note of E. The root note of D is on the 12th fret. Okay? So if you keep in mind where that root note is relative to the shape you're playing, you can easily shift it to other keys or follow chord progression changes. So basically, by knowing that D is a whole step lower than E, you shift it down 2 frets, which is a whole step. So instead of beginning, I'm going to show you the Mixolydian shape. Instead of beginning on the 10th fret of the low E, you begin on the 8th fret of the low E. You basically just shift the whole thing down. You play the same shape across all 6 strings, but you just play it on different frets. So in the key of D minor, Mixolydian shape would be key of D minor, you're in a totally different key. It's relatively easy. You can do that with any of the shapes that I just showed you across the fretboard, shifting them. So if you wanted to play in the key of B, where would you go? Well, if you wanted to play, say, the Mixolydian shape as well in the key of B, keep in mind, well, B, the root note, one of the root notes, is on the 10th fret of the D. Now, you don't have to use this root note as a reference. You could use the 7th fret of the low E, the 7th fret of the high E, whatever root note you want to use as a reference. My personal favorite is just on the D because it's easy for my brain to comprehend. So if you wanted to play Mixolydian and the key of B minor, you would shift it down from, you basically shift it down 2.5 whole steps from E, which would begin on the 5th fret of the low E instead of the 10th fret of the low E. So the Mixolydian shape in the key of B minor would be the same shape, just beginning on the 5th fret. Easy, right? And you can do that with any of the other shapes as well. Some of them you may find easier than others.